largest single.
Ms. Jawahar Sarkar. Thank you. The two special addresses of the evening. Our first speaker is Mr. Jawahar Sarkar. He is currently the Chief Executive Officer of Prasar Bharati, which is a national public trust that governs the two broadcasters, the two national broadcasters, Doordarshan and All India Radio. He has been trained in sociology and in history, and he's managed, despite his career as a bureaucrat, he's managed to keep a foot in academia and keep his research interests alive. He's been instrumental in many ways in bringing a certain dynamism into public broadcasting, and I think his efforts will begin to show fruit in the next few years. And he's just told me that his specific research interests are media and religion, and has served as Secretary of the Department of Culture. And I think his interest in culture and society continues to govern the way he manages the two broadcasters. So, Mr. Jawahar Sarkar.
Thank you, Usha. Friends, I'm the odd man out. I'm not a professor. I have a profession, but certainly not this. There was a reason why I inflicted myself on you, and as she said, all good things start in the evenings, and it was one evening that I had gone for a lecture tour to New Zealand that I met Peter Thompson, who's sitting somewhere there. Peter mentioned about the IMCR. In my preceding 2 years in the public broadcast, I had heard about a lot of professional bodies. The Asia Pacific Broadcast Union, the Global Media Forum, the NAB. It was kind of hungry to get into analytical forums. And then he mentioned about this, and I looked it up. So I'd be the first preacher from the other side of the fence to be actually coming here. The public broadcaster, in just one word in India, is associated a lot with the founding of the idea of India. I'll come to that in a minute. It's not the jazziest, but it is the biggest. It has around 500 TV and radio stations all over India. And India, as you know, is still in the process of coming together. India remains, all countries are basically on the move, but India is more of a process that's very exciting subject to study. So we come from two different worlds. You are the academics, we are the practitioners. You are the hunter, we are the hunted. You are the analysts and we are the microbes. So I'm there for you. Coming to this concept of the idea of India, there's something that's gripped me in my study of history and sociology and anthropology, especially the story of India. Now I won't bore you with long stories, is how India comes together through very sharp delineating ideas. The first is an eternal value system. Let's not go beyond that. A value system, a value exchange that goes on in the subcontinent for over, 2.5 millennia. We haven't been able to link the value system of the Indus Valley civilization to the rest, but we are on the job. Having said that, number one is this, what I call a value system. Others can call it by an eternal continuum, a continuum without practically a break. British bayonets did a good job. And then we have the post and telegraph systems of India, which has been studied, written about, movies. We have a lot of stuff on the post and telegraph's role in uniting a rather large country. We have then the Indian Railways, an epoch in themselves. And then we often miss out the last component, and that is All India Radio and Doordarshan. The factors that I've just mentioned here and before actually refer to the physical getting together. Remember, we are talking in the context of other large multinational states of comparative value. We have Russia that went in for a Russification. We have China that from the time of the 3rd century BC went in for an official homogenization under Qin Shi Huangdi. But in India, we never had that. It was all disparate. And we suddenly come together in 1947. And in this physical unity of India, there's a strong requirement for an emotional bonding, a supranational identity, an identity that crosses over from you are Tamil, I'm Bengali, you are Telugu, I'm Punjabi. We still talk on those terms because we have 24 official languages and 600 dialects. All India Radio and Doordarshan broadcast in 146 languages every day. So as I said, it is a cultural content, it's a cultural mosaic that is still in the process of being honored, in the process of being respected for their diversity, and at the same time an underlying unity that holds us together other than IPL, cricket and a bit of football. So having said that, I have referred to the role of the radio and TV. And the radio happens to be linked to the Hindi film songs and other modern songs that got us together. It was then that about a year ago I was trying to work on a paper on how Vivid Bharati got India together. As Indians know, Vivid Bharati played a major role in getting the emotional unity within India. Doordarshan brought the nation to a halt in what was called the morning curfews. Absolute curfews were declared in India in the 1980s and 90s, when on a Sunday morning a particular program was being aired across the nation, irrespective of what was your language. And therefore the affinity towards what would be known as the lingua franca of India, the official language, slightly different from the official language, came together through Doordarshan. The Green Revolution also came. Now look, here I'm not here for beating the drums of Doordarshan or All India Radio. I'm just trying to refer to a vast area that is open to scrutiny. We do not want any chocolate stories. We want an analytical, critical, clinical view of what happened. And we want it for posterity. We want it for academia. We want it for ourselves. That's why I came came over to you to appeal to the academic community. Now, one problem that all my friends in academia say is that big deal, but when I go to study the archives in your radio stations or your offices, nobody allows us entry. And that's a very typical Indian trait. I can assure you as head of the organization that we have ordered, I would use the word ordered for want of a better word, that we'll have to have cubicles for scholars. That's the first step I've been able to do. And I hope the Indian scholars would take this opportunity of coming back. My mail ID is up on the web, on the net. If you have any problems, come straight back to me. You're not doing me a favor, you're doing academia, you're doing the repository of wisdom a favor. I thought I would come in only as a catalyst. That's all. Having said that, I would also refer to the vast world of dynamic media outside of the public broadcaster. I refer to the Indian print media, the only print media, one of the only print media in the world that's galloping when the rest are collapsing. A phenomenon worth studying. How much is it linked to literacy? How much is it linked to status? Look at the electronic media, 850 channels. How are they surviving? How can news channels, some 350 of them, survive when every one of them is suffering losses except two? When we come to academics, we have to come in with this honesty of studying a phenomenon as a phenomenon. So India right now went through the elections and gave very interesting results. To some, quite unexpected results. Unexpected in the sense of the margin of victories, if I've been able to gather the mood of the House. Now, having said that, how much did the social media play? There's a lot of hype about the social media. How much of it is true? Has social media gained that space, and at whose cost? Or is it new ground? India has, as you know, 66% of its population below 35. We are the world's largest youth force. Were they hungry for a media that was not either print or electronic? But in the last 40 years, I've seen the change of India from one of those marginal basket cases to being considered as one of the major giants of the Asian century. You know that, I know that. And among the countries that are open to business, that are open to study, India's one. So there, as an Indian, not as a public broadcaster, I would welcome you to study the phenomenon so that we can gain a little bit of distancing when it comes to our own analysis. Having said all of this, let me conclude by saying that I'm perhaps the only civil servant out here for no fault of mine. Now, I have about 2.5 years tenure left. I'd like to extend whatever help I can be. With these words that I spoke from my heart, I hope I've been able to convey, because I have not been able to jargonize a single one of my statements. Thank you.